Hi, and welcome everyone to the Creative Cast. My name is Lucas Homan, and this week we are recording our last episode of the year. But guys, I'm bringing you a little surprise today since we will be touching on a topic that we haven't covered on the show so far. We will be talking about relationships and what's the best way for you to find a suitable and healthy partner. And in order to do this, I have a dating coach with us tonight. She has over 12 years of experience in this field. She is tuning in all the way from Santa Barbara, California. We have Keriann Long. Welcome.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Great. It's a blast having you here, since this is a topic that I'm personally very interested in. And very curious to learn a lot myself actually today.
Great.
We normally start off having the guest introducing himself, herself, and getting a little bit of your background in and how you ended up doing coaching.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, you didn't mention this part, but I have been a therapist for 12 years. I still am a therapist in addition to being a coach. And I started studying, I got a master's in counseling psychology with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. So I did a lot of work with families and couples early on in my career as part of my training. And one thing I noticed in doing that work is that it was really difficult to help couples resolve relationship problems when they had been going on for a really long time. When they were already really entrenched, it was hard to find traction and make changes. So I've always been interested in early intervention in kind of all areas of psychology that I've explored. And the early intervention version of relationships is dating. So I had the opportunity to start working with some clients in therapy who were having trouble navigating their lives in this area, kind of in a particularly unique situation. And the first couple of people who I worked with on this ended up going on to have really successful relationships, get engaged, on the path to getting married, on the path to having children together. So I thought, maybe I have something here. Maybe I can help more people with this. And because it's not something that people commonly come to therapy specifically for, I decided I want to advertise this and put this out to the world as a specific service so people know that they can come to me specifically for this expertise. And I've had a lot of fun doing it ever since I got started.
All right. So you kind of try to make that your niche where you can kind of extend your business in that sense.
Yes, exactly.
And what really drove you into going into that specific direction?
I think having the experience of seeing how confused people were about relationships when I would first start working with them, and then seeing the clarity that they would come to based on our work together, and feeling like I have so much information about all of this in my brain, both from my studies and from my personal life experience. And it made me realize that there was something kind of unique or special, I guess you could call it genius zone, about this area of knowledge for me. And I knew that I could help more people with it. And also because I really believe in the power of relationships and the impact that they have on the quality of our lives. So it's something that I feel passionately about and love to help other people with.
Okay. So basically it's one, you feel like you're very good at doing this, and two, it's a very crucial point or aspect to focus on, since it might be the origin of or the cause of so many other problems we might suffer from.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And how long you've been a dating coach then?
I started offering dating coach as a specific separate service in February of 2020. So almost 2 years now.
All right. Okay. So just getting that right in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And how has been the start for you of that?
Of starting to offer dating coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very interesting because I started in February of 2020, and then in March of 2020,
okay, I see where you're going.
people were not really dating so much. They were mostly staying in their homes. So that was very challenging. I ended up mostly doing therapy, especially for the first half of that year, because it was hard to get dating coaching clients. But then once I started getting some clients, I started getting some momentum. And I think then starting in about like early spring of this year, it kind of just exploded and took off and went from like a trickle to consistent clients coming my way. I have a waiting list now. Nice. I'm not even able to see all the people that want to work with me. So it's a really good problem to have. And it's brought a lot of like excitement and energy to my work that there's so much interest in working with me. That feels really good.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, congratulations. I mean,
thank you.
That is kind of that spot that I may call it entrepreneur, tries to achieve, right? To get to that point where it starts to grow exponentially, right? So good for you on that one. May I ask, or do you know why that happened?
I do know why that happened.
All right.
At least I have a theory. One thing is that most people find me through Instagram and TikTok. And because of Reels and the way that Instagram was promoting Reels and is still promoting Reels in the last year, I went from having like 200 something followers in, I think it was March of this year. And now I have 19,000 followers. So there was this huge growth in exposure and people's interest in my work. And I think along with that came social proof and people trusting me. I also got some really great testimonials from my clients who worked with me in the last year and a half. So I think it was both just the consistency of effort over time. And also I got lucky with, getting on TikTok relatively early as a dating coach, doing tons of video content on Instagram that Instagram was really favorable towards, and it kind of all came together. Yeah,
you did. I mean, it worked for me too, right? I mean, that's how I found out about you. I just happened to see a reel of yours, like, oh, okay, this looks interesting, and I fall for it.
Great, that's the goal.
I totally blame you. No, but all right. So there we got a little bit of of an overview on what you do and how you started, how it's going right now, how it evolved in that sense. Let's dive a little bit deeper into how you actually work. What's your methodology? And let's break down with that. So would you say, first of all, what do you offer people?
So my main offer right now will probably change in the future, but I offer one-on-one coaching packages. So I work with people on a month-to-month or 4-week to 4-week basis, because some people are able to achieve their goal with me in 4 weeks. Some people need 8 weeks. Some people even stay with me for 12 weeks. So rather than having a really prescriptive program of like, this is exactly what I do, it goes for exactly this long. I'm kind of taking some from the therapy model, which is like, people are different. People need different things. And while on the business end, it may not be the most savvy thing to do because it makes my job a little bit harder. I really like to do it that way. I like to be able to customize my one-on-one coaching to what it is that the person needs and kind of how long they need to accomplish their goal.
Okay, you're saying business-wise, it's maybe not like the most profitable way? In what sense? Like instead of offering it to more at the same time, or?
That's one thing. The other thing would be having a very kind of cookie cutter thing that's just always repeated over and over again, versus what I'm doing is closer to therapy in that it's more customized and I work with people on a variety of different things. So for example, if I were to really narrow it down, one of the main things that I offer is helping people who have an anxious attachment style in relationships start to feel more calm and secure in relationships, so they don't always have to be worried that the person's going to leave them or that they're going to break up. So I could niche down just to that and just offer that. And that would be more of a, okay, this is what I know I help everybody with anxious attachment. And I'm actually working toward doing a course that's more oriented toward that. But rather than doing that, I also see people who are in relationships. I see people who are just in the dating portion of things. So I'm always tailoring what I'm doing with each client to what their actual problem is. So that's the main difference, I think, is like having something that's just solving one problem for one type of ideal client, repeating that over and over and over again, versus what I'm doing, which is more challenging as far as customizing what the need is for each individual person.
No, but I reckon having, your what you teach and how you teach it to everyone in a very tailored manner, for sure is more, it's better for the client for sure.
I think so. I like it. It's hard for me to break out of that because I've been doing that for 12 years as a therapist. So I'm trying to train my brain that I can get a little bit more generalized and still help people. But this is my journey along that process.
Totally agree. I mean, I can see the other way of doing it in other kinds of industries, sure. But when it comes to people, personality, mentality, and how to deal with potential all kinds of relationships, it's probably the only good way to do it. Like the other one probably wouldn't work. Like I feel like it wouldn't be.
It's interesting. I've really had to challenge myself on that belief because I kind of believe the same. And one of the great things that's come out of doing my work on Instagram and TikTok is that I have reached an international audience from people all over the world. And the questions that they ask me, the things that they're worried about, the things that they're struggling with are the same all across the world. So I do think there are some things that are just generally true for humans. I see that in my work too, that I see these same kinds of patterns happening across all different kinds of people and all different kinds of relationships. So I think there are things that I can teach that are a little bit more general that will be helpful to lots of people. But the ultimate always is going to be one-on-one coaching where you're getting exactly the feedback that's specific to your situation.
Well, that reminds me of something I wanted to touch on, which was, actually having people from different cultures, different countries in that sense, because, manners and customs are very different when you go outside your border, and how does that influence how you actually approach them?
I have been, I guess, kind of fortunate to mostly work with people from kind of westernized countries. And so I find that things are similar enough that there hasn't been a major disconnect between, what I know of to be normal, quote unquote, versus what they're experiencing. And one of the things that I had to learn as a therapist is that I can never assume that I know what someone's cultural values are, cultural practices are. So I've always kind of been in the habit of being curious about that. And if I present something as an idea or guidance, I check in with someone and say, how does that fit with how things are culturally for where you are? How does that fit with dating culture where you are? And usually I haven't come across anything yet that's been so far off. I could imagine that if I worked with somebody who was living in a place where culture was very different from, the United States, because I kind of know the United States culture in general, that might be more challenging. I'm sure it would be more challenging, but I think there's a way to approach it that's kind of cooperative, where I don't presume that I know, because I don't, and elicit feedback from the person about what their actual experience is, so that I can work together with them on figuring out what's going to work best for them in their cultural situation.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about, people maybe from Asia or from Middle East or something like that, Okay. You said that normally your clients, clients is the right word, or is there a better
clients,
word?
Yeah, that's what I call them.
They normally stay with you 1 to 3 months, roundabout. I mean, considering that they want to change their behavior, their really the part of their personality, that time frame doesn't sound like a lot, right? So, do they eventually manage to do it in such a short-term period?
Yeah, it's actually pretty amazing. And one of the things that I really love about doing coaching versus therapy, I love them both. But the cool thing about coaching is that because it's so focused and because it's so targeted, I find that it's, and because usually it's time limited, we know we're only going to meet for 4, 8, or 12 weeks. We know that this is not going to be something that's just going to be going on and on forever. I think in therapy, because we know it could go on and on forever, there's no urgency behind, let's get to the bottom of this. Let's make a plan. What are your action steps? What do you want to do differently? There's just a more kind of casual and slow pace, which I think is appropriate for therapy because it has a different kind of goal. But in coaching, because we're focused on just this one thing and there is a time limit to it, it's amazing what people can accomplish in a short period of time. And the other cool thing is that most people who are drawn to work with me have done therapy before and or are willing to go on to do more therapy after we work together. So it's kind of like, in the time that we're going to work together, I'm going to give you lots of skills and things that you can do and practice going forward. You're not going to have those nailed by the time we're done working together. It's going to be a process of continuing to practice those things and practice doing things differently, both yourself and in relationships. And, but people, I think the feedback that I get is that people leave feeling confident that they know what they need to do. And now it's just a matter of practicing doing it. And if they're getting stuck with the kind of more emotional parts of it, if there's trauma that goes with it, if there's the stuff about their life history that's making the present stuff hard, therapy is a better place to address that on an ongoing basis. So because a lot of my clients have done that work either on the front end or are willing to do it afterwards, it's kind of a nice combination of things, because I'm not going to pretend that as a coach, I can have the same kind of impact in terms of somebody's like psychology and emotions and trauma as doing therapy. And that's not my goal. It's more tools and strategy based.
Okay. I was thinking of that it's not necessarily that in that time frame they managed to change completely and after that they're healed in that sense,
right?
But instead you teach them the tools they need or the skills they need, and after you two are done, it's up to them to get familiar with them and practice them and
exactly
kind of keep going the right way on by himself. Okay. Something I asked myself as well is, what kind of let's call it problems could people come to you with? What are serious problems that you can help with, and what are issues that maybe are not big enough to do this?
That's a good question. I haven't really come across an issue that was too small to be addressed.
Okay.
Like usually, I mean, especially if people are willing to make the investment to work with me because it's not inexpensive, usually they have a fairly significant problem. So I'll kind of go through like timeline of relationships. So
Yes,
what a lot of people come to work with me for is they have been away from dating or pursuing relationships for a period of time. Sometimes that's because they've been in a relationship all that time. A lot of people come to me because, especially after the pandemic, because they were very consumed by work or other things in their life and they hadn't been prioritizing relationships. And then the loneliness and isolation of the pandemic helped them realize that having a partner was actually something that was really important to them. So they needed some kind of support and holding and guidance as far as, how do I actually do this? How do I get started with this again? Like for some people, it feels like things have changed a lot since they last dated in terms of dating apps and just online dating culture and how to manage all of that. Sometimes people are coming out of long-term relationships or marriages and recognizing that there were things that they really didn't like about that relationship, and they don't want to repeat that pattern in their next relationships. So they want this kind of like, what's a good word? Interference or interrupter of the pattern or of the cycle. By doing some coaching, there's an opportunity to really consider what went well or didn't go well about the previous relationships and what you want to do differently going forward. So that's kind of like the starting with dating kind of thing. The other thing people will come to me for is around dating is kind of fear or discomfort or resistance to dating. I've worked with a few people recently who that was up for them. So they know that this is something that they want, but they need a little nudge and some support with getting comfortable with just kind of going through the motions of doing the things that you have to do to meet new people and go on dates. So that's been fun to work with too. And then I have people come to me who are already in relationships and usually relatively new ones. So within the first, let's say 6-ish months of a new relationship, and they're feeling anxious about the relationship. Sometimes people are feeling uncertain about whether or not that person is a good fit for them. And they just want to have some support and guidance and a check-in to be able to talk about and discern and make sure that this relationship is a good fit for them. Oftentimes people are feeling anxious in their relationships. As I mentioned before, they have like an anxious attachment style and they're sick of feeling that way. They have a good partner who they trust, who they know is good to them, who they know isn't going to do anything wrong, but they're finding themselves still feeling anxious in the relationship. So I work with them to help them work with that anxiety and get to a place where they can be more calm, secure, trusting of their partner, and just enjoy their relationship instead of feeling so anxious.
Okay. And may I enter into what's usually your procedure of analysis and
So when people start with me, I meet with them for 4 weeks. We meet every week for 15 minutes via Zoom. I usually have about 25-minute phone call with them before we decide to get started. So in that first phone call, I get an idea about, what the current problem is, what's got them interested in coaching, what they've tried before, what's worked or hasn't worked, what they're trying to get out of coaching so that I can tell whether or not I'm going to be a good fit for working with them. And if I can help them accomplish their goal, because if I can't, I'll be transparent with them about that. And also to kind of assess for, is this a clinical problem that needs to be addressed by a therapist? Because as a therapist, I'm only able to work with people who live in California. So if it's someone from outside of California is contacting me and they have a clinical need, like they have serious depression, serious anxiety, PTSD, something like that, much better served by a therapist than by a coach. So do that little assessment. And then as I start to work with people based on what their goal is, we start to address whatever their concern is in the coaching sessions. So usually I get a little bit of background about, what's the history leading up to this current problem. I don't spend a lot of time on that because I feel like that's something that's also better served for therapy, but I also don't want to be completely blind to why is this happening now?
Yeah.
And, depending on what the problem is, starting to work together on what are the things that you can do right now in the present to shift this. So what are the things that you can do internally? What are the ways to change how you're thinking about this? What are the ways to change how you're relating to this yourself? And then also thinking about behaviorally, what are the things that you can do in your relationships too, or as you're starting to date, do you want to be communicating in a different way? Do you want to be interacting in a different way? So it's hard to say, like I said, it's hard to say super generally what I do because it's so customized to each person, but that's kind of the thing that's true for everyone.
Okay. And going into the meat of this, maybe we can start off with maybe listing up a little bit of the most how do you say that, like what do male and female do, what's the biggest mistakes we do generally speaking?
Yes. Oof. My favorite topic.
Finally.
Well, especially for the people who are drawn to my work, I find the biggest problem is first of all, having an awareness about what it is that you actually want. Some people don't have a really good awareness of what that is. They're just kind of going through the motions and focused more on whether or not somebody else is interested in them than whether or not they actually like the person themselves. Okay. So it's more about being chosen than being in the role of also choosing. So helping people have that awareness to begin with. Some people have that, but then they aren't able to communicate what it is that they want. So I find that a lot of people in relationships get stuck and get into problems because there are things that aren't working about the relationship or that they don't like or something that they want more of. And rather than communicating about it, they just shut all their feelings down, shut all their needs down. And then, as you can imagine, end up feeling pretty unhappy or dissatisfied in their relationship. So something that I help a lot of people with is first the identifying and then figuring out how can I communicate this in a way that's going to be most likely to be well received. There was something else I was thinking about it and then I lost it.
Maybe I can ask what can be something like that? What can be something you might want, but you're maybe too scared or too insecure to ask for?
That's a great question. A lot of times, like if we get down to the most simple example, it's a desire for more frequent communication or seeing each other more often. So for example, I might work with somebody who just wants to hear from and check in with and connect with the person that they're seeing or they're dating more often than it's currently happening. And what I find is that, humans are not mind readers. So the other person might not know that you want that. And that might be a kind of typical frequency of communication for them, but they might be absolutely open and willing to communicate with you, connect with you more often if you just let them know that you would like that. Yeah. And I also think about this, especially in early dating, as a point for discernment. So if you know that you want this in a relationship, sometimes if it's a lot, it's worth looking at what's going on with that. Like, is that actually necessary? Can you meet some of your own needs? Can you get your needs met outside of the relationship in addition to within the relationship? But in general, people are asking for very reasonable things. Like, I want to hear from a person once a day or something like that. It's not like, I need you to text me every hour. That might be a bit much. So figuring out what that is, letting the person know, I would really love if we could connect or check in once a day. How does that feel for you? How would that be for you? So rather than making a demand, just presenting it as a request. Yeah. And if you find that person, if they say yes, but they don't do it, or they say no, that's important information to have as you're deciding whether or not you want to continue investing in a relationship with this person, right? Yeah. So rather than what I see a lot of people run by is the fear that if I state my needs, the person might say no, or they might think that I'm too much. So it's better for me to shut down my needs and just not get them met and stay in this unsatisfying relationship versus doing the hard and vulnerable thing, which is stating what it is that you want, giving the person an opportunity to say yes or no, and then being in the power position of being able to choose, I want to continue to invest in this relationship or not, based on how this person is responding to my needs.
Wow, there's already so much in that, because like I just get ideas in just listening to you. First thing that popped in my mind was, well, I hear so many people do. For me, at least, it feels wrong. It's you're a bit scared, of saying what you want, and then once you actually get your yourself together to do it, they often phrase it in a very accusative way.
Yes.
Right, because they're already frustrated from not saying it before.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And then they go, "Oh, why aren't you texting me more?"
Yes.
Yes. That's like in a form of an aggression. Right?
Absolutely.
So I feel like that's something that people should be really wary about.
Absolutely. I was actually just talking with a client about this recently, that the antidote to that is to do this kind of process of like that I've been speaking to, which is having awareness all the way along about what it is that you want and need, and really ideally communicating those things as soon as possible. So, because I think usually when people come in that aggressive way, it's because they already feel resentful at that point. And they often also feel defensive because they are sharing something that's vulnerable. And rather than, what's more effective is to share it from a vulnerable state, which is hard for us to do. It takes practice to be willing to do that. But if we share it from a vulnerable state versus an aggressive one, we're so much more likely to get our needs met. But it's really hard to do that when you're way far down the line and you're already feeling resentful and upset about this person. It's hard to present it in a calm and kind and neutral way when you're already feeling angry.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like oftentimes it's already too late.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a tip or something that people in that position already that they can, I don't know, be more mindful on how they say things.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was already coming to mind for me before you asked is that, because you're right, that's often the point where we feel the big enough of a push to say something. So the best thing you can do if you're in that position is to try to take a step back from the heat of the moment or the big emotions of the moment, and maybe not say something when you're feeling the most emotion around it, right? So maybe give yourself some space, give yourself some time, like you were saying before, give yourself time to kind of get yourself together, collect yourself, think out ahead of time what you want to say versus just saying the kind of like instinctual thing that is probably from ego and probably from kind of a wounded place and probably from kind of a defensive place. Put yourself, if you can, try to put yourself in the other person's shoes and imagine if somebody were coming to me with this request or complaint or frustration, how would I want them to approach me about it? What would I want them to say? And if you think about it from that perspective, if you get outside of yourself and put yourself in the other person's shoes, it's easier to think about, all right, here's a way to say this that doesn't sound so aggressive, that like promotes us being able to communicate about this versus, because if you come at someone aggressively, they're just going to shut down and get defensive too, right? It's not going to promote conversation and communication. So if you take the time to try to cool down enough and you can even communicate the way you're feeling. You can say, I want to be transparent with you. Like, I've gotten to the point where I'm feeling angry and frustrated about this, or whatever it is that you're feeling. You can communicate the feeling without projecting the feeling by coming at them with so much aggressiveness and defensiveness, right? And that's gonna be much more likely to promote a healthy conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just likely that the people that do approach you are already there, right?
Yes. So do you want some ideas about what to do when you're on the other end of that?
Yes, please.
If you're on the receiving end of it. Yeah. I mean, you can do kind of the same thing, especially if you have a good rapport with that person. Is this takes practice. I'm not going to pretend that this is easy to do right off the bat, but there's this amazing thing that happens in relationships called co-regulation, where if one partner is really agitated, upset, frustrated, angry, anxious, any of those kinds of things, if the other person can be there as a calm and steady presence and not meet them in their emotions, that can actually help the other person calm down. So the natural reaction when someone's coming at you with aggressiveness is defensiveness, right? So you might notice, if you're on the receiving end of these kinds of criticisms, you might notice you feel your defensiveness rise up. You might feel shame rise up, because usually when we're being criticized, shame is in the mix. So if you can do the same thing, which is like take a breath, take a pause, maybe even ask to have this conversation a little bit later on, like, hey, I hear what you're saying. I want to give it a little bit of thought. Can we come back together around 5 o'clock tonight to have this conversation? Can we come back together tomorrow morning at breakfast to have this conversation, so that you also give the other person some time to cool down? So anything that you can do to kind of regulate your own emotions and your own body's reactions to what's happening and kind of cool the fire is going to help the other person calm down too. As long as you don't tell them like, calm down, you're overreacting. That doesn't help.
I've been there before. I've made that mistake myself. So Maybe another, or something I like to do sometimes that helps me in those kind of situations is to write the question down before actually saying it.
That's a great idea.
Right? Because that it obligates you to take your time, to slow down, right? Which
Absolutely. Yeah. And it gives you it kind of forces you also to take a moment to actually consider those words and how those words are going to sound coming out of your mouth, how those words are likely to be received. When we don't think that through and we just say it out loud without really considering what we want to say, then it can go in a way that doesn't end up feeling good for us.
Yeah. And as you said, empathy is king.
Absolutely.
For really everything we do. And when it comes to empathy, I feel like it's especially important when you do feel mistreated, or when you feel there's another word for that, but like when you feel treated unfairly.
Yes.
Especially then when it you feel like it doesn't make sense to show empathy, right?
Yes.
Because you hate that person. It's like, no, they don't deserve it.
Yes.
That in those moments, being showing even more empathy than before.
Yes.
Really, really helps. It's like this great weapon you got.
Absolutely. I say that empathy disarms, right? So when we're in conflict with someone and I was actually just thinking, I'm probably going to do a story on this sometime soon, because I thought it was a good topic to share more about. But when we are in conflict with someone, sometimes it feels like we have to agree with what they're saying in order to be able to empathize with them. And that's not true at all.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to agree with them at all. We can hold different positions and still be able to communicate that we understand that person's position, whether or not we agree with it.
Yeah.
And it's the most effective thing you can do in an argument or a conflict with someone. It prevents things from escalating. It disarms the conflict, and it gets you to a point where you both can hear and understand each other and have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Most times when I get frustrated about someone or what someone has done, it's oftentimes because I feel like I'm not being understood.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or not, I'm not being heard. And I also, I tend to, I don't know, take everything very personally too. Like they did that to me, right? Which it can be, but not always necessarily be the case. Okay. Yes. I feel like we went down quite the rabbit hole there already, but I love it. I love it. So we came from all the way from the point of not communicating what you want or not knowing what you want. That was the first example.
Yes.
All right, let's go for another one.
Something else that comes up often. Should we maybe talk about feeling anxious in relationships and how to work with feeling a little bit more calm and secure? Would that be a good thing to talk more about?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is also kind of something that is customized per person, because people have different things that help them to kind of regulate their brains and their bodies. And so usually when I'm coaching somebody, I check in with them about what that thing is for them, and people will have different answers. I was talking to someone the other day who was saying like taking her dogs for a walk is something that will help her kind of break the anxiety cycle.
Like routines.
That she tends. So what will come up often for people who have an anxious attachment style is they are hyper aware of any sign that something might be off or bad or wrong in their relationship. It might be a sign that things are going in a bad direction.
Okay.
And oftentimes it's like subtle, tiny little things that don't actually mean anything. But because we're so attuned to seeing them, we're just picking up on them all the time. Yeah. And so when somebody who has an anxious attachment style is in a relationship with someone and they pick up on something like that, they start to go into this kind of anxious spiral of, well, okay, they just did this thing that they don't normally do. What does that mean? Does that mean that they don't like me anymore? Does that mean they don't want to see me anymore? Does it mean they don't want to talk to me anymore?
Okay.
Does this mean that we're going to, you get the idea.
Okay.
Yeah. So a big piece of that is learning how to interrupt that cycle of the spiral of the thinking. So if there's something that you know that you can do that helps to calm your brain and body, for some people it's writing, for some people it's calling and talking to a friend, for some people it's going outside and going for a walk, for some people it's like taking a nap. There's all kinds of different things that people can do to just kind of interrupt that cycle. Yeah. And that's the first thing that I help
like
people
to distract oneself.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. There's a great, sorry, I'm just a little. In Germany, there's a great word for that, actually. When you have that spiral going on in your head, it's called Kopfkino, which means head cinema. It's like you start to create your own movies in your head.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep.
And the way I deal with that, because I have that a lot. So I don't know what that says about me, but I have that a lot. When I have that, and I notice I do have that right now.
Yes.
I call it out.
Yes.
Like, oh, I'm having Kopfkino right now. And I say it. I say it to me.
I love that.
It's like, gosh. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of surprising myself that I'm doing it.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's, I don't know if you know Brene Brown, the author and researcher. She the way she says it's very similar. They don't call it cinema, but she says the story that I'm making up right now. That's what she'll say to herself, or to, like, if she's in conflict with her husband, she'll go to him and she'll say, the story that I'm making up right now is blah, 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 blah.
Okay,
and she recognizes like, it's probably not true, but this is what's happening for me internally. So it's helpful to acknowledge it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
That's great. I love that.
Some German words always work.
Yes.
Okay. So you were talking about the different, routines or actions someone can take to actually get out of that spiral.
Yes. So that's the first thing, is interrupting the cycle. And then there's a lot of cognitive work that people can do around this too, as far as their thinking. So one of the tricks is to take the piece of thing, like the little piece that you're noticing that happened, and zoom your focus way out so that you can see your whole relationship and not just that one piece. And when you look at that one piece in the context of your whole relationship, are you finding that you have any other evidence that the worry that's coming from that one piece is actually something worth being worried about? So like, let's say, for example, somebody doesn't get a text at a normal time that they would from their partner. Or the person that they're dating. And they think, well, this person texts me every morning at 8 a.m. Why is this person not texting me? Are they with somebody else? Are they going out on a date? Are they all the things?
Okay. Clearly cheating. Clearly.
Yes.
No doubt.
Yes. Like, I know for sure this is happening right now. So then we zoom out and we think about, okay, well, what happened with this person yesterday? What has happened with this person over the last week? What has happened with this person over the last 6 months? Do I have any other evidence aside from this person not texting me at 8 a.m. this morning that this person is not interested in me anymore, that they're cheating on me, that they're interested in someone else? Is there any other evidence that I have here of that? And usually the answer will be no. Sometimes the answer is yes. And if the answer is yes, then that's worth paying attention to, right? You don't want to just rule out any thought that you have about this, because this anxiety is here to try to protect us, right? But we want to check the facts and see if the emotions that are going with what's happening is actually fits the evidence and the facts of the whole picture of the relationship.
Okay. The first thing that pops in my mind about this specific topic is, well, generally jealousy, right? Or I don't know, or maybe it's just a cliche, but I think generally that's what people have to deal with, especially in the beginning.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe they see their partner talk to another person or something, and that's maybe sometimes already enough. So that's also it fits into that, and
absolutely,
it can be treated this way. In a sense. Also tend to apply kind of like law, like it's in English, like there's a basic rule in law, where you first have to like the innocence presumption or presumption of innocence.
Yes.
My English is just kicking me right now. And I tend to apply that actually to my partner or to my friends. I always assume that they or that like it's something not offensive or nothing crazy. It's the least thing that I probably would expect.
Yes, I love that. In the US, we say innocent until proven guilty. And
I think, exactly.
I think that's a really helpful thing to bring to relationships, because our brain is naturally going to want to jump to the opposite end. Our brain is naturally going to want to jump to worst case scenario of trying to protect us, right?
Exactly.
So if you can intentionally take on this mindset or belief of, I'm going to believe that this person is innocent until I have evidence otherwise, I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't bring it up, right? Because if you don't speak about it, because it's still in your mind. So if you don't speak about it, it will stay there. It will only grow bigger over time. Going back to the first step, to the first point we were talking about. So even though you assume it's nothing too crazy, and you speak it up, you can even maybe say, oh yeah, I saw it, I just got a little jealous, and we're wondering,
yes,
and just formulate it nicely, and it will be fine.
I think that's a great way to approach it. Yeah.
All right, nice. So we have touched already on two very, I'll say, big topics that most people tend to do wrong at some stage in their life, especially in the beginning, or you are not as experienced. And could we add some mistakes that we do, maybe divided within what mainly males do wrong, or what mainly females do wrong?
That is a good question. Well, there's something that comes to mind for me about men, because it's been just coming up a lot lately in kind of what I consume on social media and, what I talk to with my clients. And I actually just experienced this myself in a personal setting recently, which is that I think women want a lot more, especially in early dating, want a lot more thoughtful attention from men. And when I say thoughtful attention, I mean, are you actually interested? I'll just put myself as the me, I'm in a relationship, but just for the example, are you actually interested in me as a human, as a person? Are you interested in getting to know me? Or are you just interested in having me around as like companionship, someone to have sex with, whatever it might be, to show off, are you actually interested in me as a person? And so I think, I don't know if this is similar in Germany and in Europe, but in the US, I think men are not socialized to be very emotionally intelligent and to connect in the same way with others as women are socialized to connect with others. And so I think, at least in the US, men have this skill kind of underdeveloped. The reason why I was thinking about it personally is that I went to my partner's work Christmas party holiday party last weekend, and he works for a high-end construction company, and it was almost all men at the party except for a few of their female employees. And I counted afterwards, I talked to at least 12 different men that night with him, with my partner there, and not a single one of them asked me a question about myself. Not a single one.
Okay. I see.
And I think some of that was because some of them had met me before and they had asked me things about like who I am and what I do when they had met me before. But it just really struck me as odd that out of all of those conversations, no one asked me anything about me. And this is what I'm hearing from a lot of women on social media, especially people who just post content about dating as people who are dating, that men don't ask them questions about themselves. Like when they're chatting on dating apps, when they go on dates, they just, it's like they don't move the conversation forward by being curious and interested. So that's one thing that just like popped into my head easily as like something that's coming up a lot lately.
I see. So they mainly talked about themselves, or what did they do? Okay.
Yes.
So very self-centered in a way.
Right. So, and women will talk about, especially on dating apps, asking the person questions to try to kind of stimulate conversation, and that person not asking any questions back. So it's like a dead end.
Yeah. Oh, I can't hear you for some reason.
Oh no, what happened?
Oh, now I can hear you.
Is it back?
Just for like a few seconds, I couldn't hear you.
Okay.
It probably was because of the internet or something. Sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
I was saying, I don't know if this is a US problem or if this is something that's happening elsewhere too, but I'm hearing a lot about this from women.
I see. I can't really say, but I happen to know that science taught us that actually this is sort of like a biological thing. Like men tend to care more about things, and women tend to care more about people.
Right.
So it is partially driven by nature, but obviously I think there's also a big part that is at least, enhanced by society.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah.
I just recall my mom always telling me that men are pigs. she used to tell me that all the time.
Oh no, that's not a great message to hear as a man growing up.
I'm like, look at me, come on.
Yeah,
I'm
okay. And I do not believe that men are pigs at all. By the way,
I didn't mean to say that.
Yeah. But I want to explicitly say, like, I think men are wonderful, and I think often they are hampered by the expectations that society places upon them about what it means to be a man and what it means to be masculine. So I empathize with how that's hard for men.
Okay. Just trying to process this.
We can get into, unless you want to talk more about what we just talked about, we could get into what women tend to do wrong in the States.
We just went to we tried to find some main mistakes that's divided by gender.
Yes.
And when it comes to men, I guess the message was we don't maybe show enough. We don't maybe not care enough about the other person, or maybe not show enough interest about that personality on the other side.
Yes.
Am I getting this right?
Yeah. And connecting in that way. Like there's a lack of connection in that, I think, which I think can keep relationships from deepening emotionally, if that's what the goal is.
Okay. It's do you have another one for us boys?
For men?
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me think if there's another one.
Before we jump.
The other thing, this is another little bit of a generalization, but the other thing that I think men don't do a great job of, and again, this might be a US generalization, is that they don't often enter dating with a clear idea of what they actually want. So sometimes, and I think women do this too, but I find it tends to be even more common on the men's side of things. I've known of and seen men who, download a dating app in the process of a breakup or a fight with their partner.
Yeah. Okay.
Or who, start dating immediately after the end of a relationship, and they have absolutely no intention of actually trying to start a new relationship.
Okay.
I don't know what their intention is, but they don't know what it is, right? They're just like, want to distract themselves or have something else to think about or meet someone new. I don't know exactly what the idea behind it is, but I find that creates a lot of hurt and pain for women, because I think in general, women approach dating usually more from the intention of wanting to try to find a partner and a partnership.
Like a long lasting.
Not always,
one.
But yeah, but often, like when women go on to dating apps, usually the intention is, I'm going to find someone to date, have as a companion, and continue to have a relationship with them. And men don't always have that intention. And I think that men would serve both themselves and women by first knowing within themselves what it is that they actually want, and then being honest and transparent about that. Because I think some men think like, well, I'm not going to be able to get any attention from women if I don't present myself as interested in a long-term relationship, knowing that that's what women want, even if that's not what they actually want. But there are women in the dating pool who know they don't want a serious relationship. They're just they're interested in meeting new people, maybe sleeping around a little bit and getting some experience sexually. And so great. like, let those people match.
Yeah.
Let the men who don't want a relationship match with the women who don't want a relationship.
Mhm.
But it makes the dating experience so unpleasant, I think, on both sides. For men who are pursuing women who want a relationship when the men don't want a relationship, it ends up being messy and kind of yucky for them.
Yeah.
And it's awful on the women's side too.
Okay. I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean,
What are your thoughts on that?
ooh. I just had
Put you on
to
the spot.
I just had to recall an experience I had, actually, I think it was this year, with a lady, and in that situation I actually were very honest about my intentions.
Mhm.
Like, I was like, I want a relationship, no pressure, but that's how it is.
Mhm.
And sadly, she wasn't interested in that,
Mhm.
and in that moment.
Mhm.
So and then I thought, okay, and I thought about it. I was like, okay, it's not that, like, it was still important that I said it out loud. So it was clear from the very beginning, and I didn't go emotionally invested, and then at some
Yes.
point later, when it's a little bit too late, I would have
Yes.
found out. I was like, oh no,
Yes.
and then I'm hurt.
Yes. Yes. So much better.
But for like some time after that, I was feeling bad. I was like, oh no, I
Mhm.
scared her, right? That was
Mm.
another thought, which was
Mhm.
kind of like battling. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, maybe I shouldn't have said anything, and
Mhm.
then it would have worked out
Mhm.
anyway.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
sometimes you think, okay, maybe they changed, because it does fit and didn't expect it, right?
Yes.
Which
Yes.
also can happen sometimes.
Mhm. Mhm.
You're not planning on having a relationship, but you happen to meet someone that
Yeah.
changes the idea.
Yes. Yes. Although I would say that is very much the exception to the rule.
All right.
Like that usually things don't go that way. And speaking of another mistake that people often make, like it's not necessarily divided by gender, but is like holding out the hope that this person said they don't want this thing that I want, but maybe they'll change their mind if I just stick around long enough. If they learn to see how lovable I am over time, eventually they'll decide to be with me. And as someone who did that way too many times in my own life and who's seen lots of my clients do the same to really bad, painful results, I say, okay. I think your approach of being transparent was smart. And that's what I usually encourage my clients to do, that it's much more likely that if someone communicates that they want something different from you, that's probably going to be true for them. Yeah. And it doesn't preclude that person ever coming back to you in the future too. Let's say they don't want a relationship right now, but they know that that's something that you want, and you guys part for whatever reason. And they find themselves at a point later on of like, I really do want a relationship now. And things were going really well with him. Like, there's always opportunity that they could come back to you. You don't have to stay together all that time in order to make that a possibility.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oof. Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah. Okay. Like, in the sense of, like, let's just, if it happens to, if we rematch somehow in the future, we can have another look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's all right. And I mean, now that you've touched on the dating dating apps topic, what's your take on that?
On dating apps?
Yeah, like Tinder is like the most famous one. Right?
Yeah. I am pro dating app. A lot of people aren't, but I like them. I think they're a useful tool. I think that the way to use dating apps in a way that's functional and helpful is to think of it not as putting pressure on every match as a possible kind of love of your life kind of thing, but rather thinking of it as an opportunity to connect you with new people much more easily than any other way that I know of. So if you use it as a way to just meet more new people and go on more dates and get to know more people, I think it's really helpful. And I think that when people are on dating apps, because there aren't other kind of social protections built in the way that there are. If you, let's say you meet someone through a friend, you already know something about that person's character and reputation and what they do and all those kinds of things. On a dating app, someone could be lying about all of those things. You just don't have that same kind of level. I guess it's social accountability that's built in. So I think dating apps require a ton of discernment and a ton of willingness to be able to kind of roll with the fact that many of the people who you meet or match with are not going to be the right match for you, and to not take that personally, not make that be about anything bad about you or even anything bad about that other person, but just thinking that like, yeah, it might take me meeting 20 people before I meet somebody who's actually the right match for me.
Yeah. I mean, I ask also because of many friends that are, I've tried these apps and still trying. And most of the times when I hear, their experiences or when they share how it went with it, it's normally quite bad. Like they sound very disappointed, and they kind of lose faith, but not in the app, but in man or woman, But what they're really blaming is the app in the end, right? Or how they're using it, I guess. Because I don't know, they have many dates and many opportunities, and it always somehow ends up badly, or it doesn't work out. But what would you say to those, which probably are most people?
That's interesting because, I guess I'm a little bit biased because I know of couples who have met and have had successful relationships through apps. And so I've seen like the happy ending for people.
Okay.
I don't know. Like I said, so the thing that's tricky about apps is that kind of like what we were talking about before with people going into dating without a clear intention about what they want. You've got people using apps for all kinds of different reasons.
Yes.
You've got people using apps because they're bored. You've got people using apps because they want some attention and affirmation about who they can get to match with them, who they can get to pay them attention via messages. They have no intention of actually meeting these people. You have people who are in relationships who are using apps for entertainment, right? So you get this huge pool of people, and not all of them are serious daters who are actually looking for a relationship. And so I think that contributes to a lot of people's disappointment with their experiences on apps, is that they're taking that to mean something. I mean, it's frustrating. Like there's no getting around that. I want to validate that it's frustrating. But if you go into using apps knowing that like some of this is going to be a waste of my time, and my kind of responsibility to myself here is to be assessing for someone's seriousness of interest as soon as possible. Right. So like my approach when I use dating apps was I would not message with people for more than a couple of days. It's like you either, as long as I felt like a good vibe from them, I felt safe with them, let's meet for a casual date ASAP. I don't want to spend 2 weeks talking to you on this dumb app and then finding that you like never actually want to go on a date. Like that's a huge waste of my time. Right. Yes. And I could never really tell if I was going to genuinely connect with someone until I actually met them. So I was like, let's skip the chatting. Let's just meet each other. And if it's cool, then great, we'll go on another date. And if not, then we will not waste each other's time any longer. So I think that attitude can help. I'm also biased in that, like, I had very good experiences on dating apps. Like I met wonderful people. I didn't have like a frustrating, bad experience. So I would be curious I don't want to be like critical or judgmental of people who have this kind of experience with dating apps, like a bad one.
Yeah.
But I would also be curious, like, is this pattern present in relationships that happened outside of dating apps too? Because if so, then it might be worth doing some self-reflection and introspection about, like, what am I bringing to this, or how am I contributing to these dynamics? Am I choosing people? Am I attracted to people who I end up having disappointing relationships with? Do I show up in a way that pushes people away? There's all kinds of things that can happen. But I think that's worth considering.
Yeah. So what I take out from this is you should try distance yourself emotionally from these apps as much as you can.
Yes.
And don't rely on them.
Yeah.
Either.
And really don't take things personally when things don't work out, because that's going to be a natural byproduct of meeting people through apps. You're going to connect with people who you are not a good match with. And I think when people feel really hurt every time that happens, that makes being on apps really, really hard.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Because it's a topic that I'm always like, oh, is this good? Is this bad? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's just really a matter of how you use it.
I think so. Yeah. And I think it's always great to combine, if you want to use apps, it's great to combine that with other ways of trying to meet new people. So I think the other thing that happens is people become completely dependent on apps as the only way that they're meeting new people. And then it's very easy to be frustrated because, like I said, people aren't always there for the right or good reasons. So it's helpful to be out in the world and doing things where other single people might be, to be involved in group activities that meet on a regular basis. So you have opportunities to meet new people, to ask friends and family for introductions to people. You don't want to just depend on dating apps alone.
Yeah. I just had to think of, probably, now the second. Before I knew about you, it was really the only dating coach that I knew, which is Matthew Hussey.
I know Matthew Hussey. Yeah,
you've heard about him. And he, I once heard him say, he gave a good tip when it comes to actually meeting someone you haven't seen before, you've met through an app. And basically, because as you said, meeting in person is really the only way to actually get to know this person properly. And he said, instead of going on a date outside and having dinner, for example, which is sort of a standard move, before that, actually giving the person a call.
Yes.
Like, not out of the blue, but like, hey, let's have a chat for like 5 minutes.
Yes. Highly recommend that. Great idea.
Because it gives you a really good feeling if going on a date in person with a person actually makes sense or not.
Absolutely. Yes. It's really interesting when I first started, this is going to make me sound like a dinosaur, but I first started online dating when I was 21, which means I was probably like around 2004. And it was like pretty early into online dating. So there was like Match.com and eHarmony. And back then, the standard practice was you would never go on a date without speaking to them on the phone first. Like that's what just everybody did.
Oh,
and
really?
That's really changed now. But the interesting thing that's happened since the pandemic, which by the way, I think like I was saying to you, I think having a phone call ahead of time is genius, because if the conversation is super awkward and awful on a phone call, you know that a date's probably not going to go well, and you can save both of you the pain of that. Right.
Yeah.
But something that's happened since the pandemic that I think is also a really good idea is that more people are starting to have a video call before they go on a date. So not only do you get to have a conversation, but you also get to see what this person actually looks like. Are they representing themselves fairly and accurately on the dating app? And you get a feeling of like, what's it like to be with this person, even if you're not there physically together.
Yeah. And, I've tried this and done this before myself. And, sometimes they're not keen or down to do that.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, I always feel like it's like a lack of commitment from their part,
Mm-hmm.
or like a lack of trust, or I don't know.
Yeah.
And
good screening tool, right?
yeah. You have to draw your conclusions if they say no, right?
Yeah.
So, but what can that mean? Like, is that a green flag, or is that a red flag, or what is that?
Yeah, if I wanted to have a video call with, like, what kind of response do you get from people if you ask of that? What do they say?
Maybe they are like, I'm not comfortable, like I don't know, FaceTiming, or
So they would prefer to just go on a date, but they don't want to FaceTime.
yeah.
That's strange to me.
Yeah, it has happened to me for sure.
I believe that it happens, but that would be that I would. Well, I hear people are saying amber flag now, so maybe I would call this an amber flag, somewhere in the middle. Worth exploring further, but
okay.
Yeah, I would probably tend to think of what you think around lack of commitment.
Or yeah, like that can be. It doesn't have to.
Yeah,
it just feels sometimes like they don't want to put any effort into this, so it works out.
That doesn't seem like a good way to start a relationship, is my general feeling of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want somebody.
I'll put it on the bad side as well.
Yeah, I don't know if Matthew Hussey talks about this. This came from somewhere outside of me, but I think it's really helpful to look for enthusiasm, right? Like, you don't want to start a relationship with somebody who's like, maybe, I don't know, like, who's not really excited and there's momentum moving forward. Like that's just not a helpful place to start a relationship from. So I think I would take no, I don't want to do FaceTime as like, there might be some lacking enthusiasm here.
Yeah, or maybe they're very, very insecure about themselves in that sense, maybe.
A lot
which
of
is
people
also
don't like.
Not so great.
True. Yeah. I've had clients who, I do phone calls with instead of video calls because they don't like looking at themselves on the screen. Yeah. So it's a thing, but also that's something that could be relevant to how a relationship would go with that person.
But another thing that you pointed out that I feel is very important is do not stretch out too much that, how you call it? Like, just chatting.
Yes.
Via text.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
endlessly.
Ugh, no.
Just coming up with new topics all the time.
And it kills the momentum, because then once you go on a date, like I had this experience earlier on in my dating, which is part of what got me to this point, was like, I would, back in the day, it was like common for people to message for a really long time before they ever met, because meeting strangers from the internet was like a very weird concept back then. But then I would find by the time we got to the date, we'd already talked about so many things that it was hard to have like the getting to know you conversation on the date, because we'd already covered all those things in messages. So it made the first date feel even more awkward. So I like being able to have those conversations with people in person whenever possible.
Yeah. So you're, in the beginning, so you're still hungry for the information and curious.
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
Finding out new stuff.
Yes.
Was there a point on the other side that you were thinking about when it comes to a woman?
Oh, yes. What are mistakes that women tend to make? Well, we kind of covered one of them already, which is that I think if there were a gender split in the not acknowledging your own needs and not communicating about your own needs, I'd say that tends to fall more on the side of women. So that's a big one.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what else. What are other? I mean, we tried to split this out by gender, but I think it's actually also true. I guess the thing that would be different for women versus men as far as this is that I think women often know what they want in a relationship, like what their intentions are as far as like, do they want something casual? Do they want something more serious? But I think the mistake that women often make is that they don't explicitly communicate that. So they get this message. I mean, you hear this all the time. It's even, there are dating coaches even now who are saying this, that like the way to get a partner is by playing hard to get and don't act overly interested, because that will push them away. And the thing that I love, there's a book called Attached. It's like the new science of adult attachment. It's by Levine and Heller, and it's wonderful. And kind of the whole point of that book and thesis of that book is that approach draws in people who have an avoidant attachment style, who have a hard time connecting in relationships, who have a hard time with emotional closeness and intimacy.
Okay.
So yeah, if you want to attract people who don't really want to be in a relationship and who are really uncomfortable with that, then playing it cool and acting like you don't care is a great strategy for attracting people like that. But if you want to attract someone who wants a lasting, committed, stable, secure relationship, that is not the way to go about doing that. So I think that that's a huge myth that's been kind of promoted over time about relationships, that it's a bad thing to be clear about what you really want. When you're clear about what you really want, you get somebody who wants that too. And that's the ultimate goal.
Okay. Yeah. I often see in that pattern just a lot of fear of rejection in the end. They don't want to get too vulnerable. So they show off and they play it cool. And a great way to see this that helped me understand this is if you are very clear and open and communicative, then of course you're giving the other person power about you. No question about that. Which is what people are so scared about. But the benefit of that is that you actually see how that person deals with power. Which casually said, power reveals your true self, right? So giving the other person a bit of power about you actually is a very good tool to see, how they behave with that, how they deal with it.
That's a great point.
Okay, so how about we jump from here to which I saw you often use in your social media, which are red and green flags. I would love to touch on these and get some of those flags out there.
Sure. Yeah. Let's start with green flags, because I feel like those are more universal than red flags. Like red flags can really be more personalized based on what's important to you in a relationship. But these are some pretty universal green flags that I see to be true for almost all relationships. And some of them are kind of like the opposite of some of the things that we've been talking about as far as mistakes go. So big green flags from the beginning of a relationship. Someone is clearly communicating their interest in you. They are making time for you in their life, even if they're busy. I'm not saying that they need to be available to you 24/7, but if you feel like you can't fit into their life, that is a big, scary, bad thing. That's not a good thing that's going to help your relationship move forward. So they're making space for you in your life, in their life. They are able to, and this goes both ways. I say they, but we want to be doing these same things ourselves too, right? They are able to communicate effectively. So if something comes up that they're feeling upset about, or seeming unfair in the relationship, or not going well, or concern they have, that they can come to you in a calm way and talk about it versus being aggressive and defensive like we talked about earlier. I personally think that communication is one of the most, I say personally, I think lots of people think this, not everybody thinks this, but a lot of people think that communication is like the real important foundation for a relationship. So when you find someone who you can communicate well with, like your communication styles match well, I think that's a big green flag, because relationships are naturally going to have points of conflict. That's just something that's going to happen. So that's not to be avoided. The goal isn't to try to never have conflict with someone. The goal is to have a partner who you can work through conflict with together. So if you can communicate well, very helpful. What else? That their words and their actions are aligned. So what they're saying they want and what they actually do are the same. So that's not always true.
So like honesty in that sense.
Yeah. And also that, if someone says, something is important to them, like let's say you have a value that family is really important to you, and you want a partner who family is really important to them, and they say family is really important to me, and yet they don't talk to their family often, they don't see their family often, they don't make their family a priority in their life. Like, you would see that there's like a misalignment here between what they say they value and how they're actually living their life. Something to look for.
Okay. I may add something to the first point, which was that you make time for the other person. If I recall it correctly, I think it was the first one. And to that, it's something that comes up a lot. Like, I have a friend that asks me like, "Oh, this girl isn't texting me back at all." I'm like, all right. Or like, you try to not make an appointment, but try to organize a date with that person, right? And be specific, like, hey, let's meet that day at that time at this restaurant. It's brilliant. Would you be down, or would you be happy to go there with me? And I feel like this is a rule that has always applied to me, which is, if they say no or they can't on that suggested time, which is perfectly okay, because we all have our lives and our plans and work and whatnot. So if they say no, that's okay. But I feel like the second step is the crucial difference between if they're interested or not, which is, do they say no and that's it? Or do they say no and, oh, I can't on that date, but I can't do next Saturday?
Yes. That's a big distinction.
Right? They try to give you an alternative plan or time.
Yes.
And if they don't, I think it's really like a clear sign that they're not interested.
Right. Yes. Or at least that they're not willing to make this a priority in their life right now. Right. Like, it might not even be a lack of interest in you. It might be lack of interest in putting effort into dating in a relationship right now. Right.
Yes, exactly.
But I actually encourage people to have boundaries around this stuff, that you don't want to just completely upend your life in order to make time for this new person in a relationship. But this is a perfect example of how you can do that. Like, no, I have something else that I've got going on at that time, but I'm available at X, Y, and Z time. Can we make one of these things work?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This leads me to another thing, which is really, this is one of, I believe, the biggest mistakes I have done on my first relationships, which was making the partner the center of everything. Center of my world, like everything is her. And all my hobbies and things I was doing before are now secondary place.
Yes. This is huge.
Yeah, please go ahead. What do you think about that? Brilliant strategy of mine.
I don't want to interrupt you if you have more to say about it.
No, it was painful to watch, to be honest. Thinking back now, back then I totally didn't understand like that I was doing that, and that it was wrong and why it was wrong. It took me many failed relationships to actually, get that right. I still struggle sometimes, since it's very, very easy to just let yourself go. Right? I'm not saying you shouldn't, make that person a priority in your life, but it shouldn't overtake other things that basically she likes you for.
Absolutely. That's such a great way of thinking about it. Yeah. Yes, this was something that I also struggled with in my early relationships, because I love relationships and I love love. And I was young and I got so deeply attached to particularly the first person that I was in a long-term relationship with. and yeah, did the same thing, like had very little aside from work and school that was going on in my life outside of the relationship. Like spent less time with my friends, didn't really have a lot of hobbies and interests outside of the things that we did together. And one of the things that I did when that relationship ended, which is I think can be really helpful for people who go through breakups when they've been in a situation like this. And even if they haven't, even if they've just spent less time on the things that they're interested in and the things they love, is that I started doing all these things again that I hadn't done in a long time. So like when I was a kid, I played softball. And so I joined a softball team. And like when I was a kid, I sang. So I joined a choir at school and like just got back connected to the things that made me and that I enjoyed outside of the relationship. That was really helpful for me. But yes, going back to what you were saying, that's such a great way of thinking about it, that like, yeah, this person was attracted to me because I do these things and because I'm interested in these things. And that's part of what sustains desire and interest in a partner, especially in a long-term relationship, is for them to have these ways that they shine in their life that's outside of the relationship. That's actually a really helpful and healthy thing for relationships. And like you said, it is so easy to let go of that and get so absorbed in the relationship, but it is really healthy and helpful to have boundaries, to continue to have your own life, your own things that you do, your own friends, your own relationships with family, all these kinds of things, your own hobbies, your own interests. It's a good thing for the relationship.
And eventually it's really, all right, or like the challenge is really to find that sweet balance, between doing your thing and still making her feel special, right? Or
yes. I like this idea. Some people talk about of like, there's you, me, and us. And so in a relationship, there's the part of there's me and there's how I take care of myself and what I do outside of the relationship. And there's you and how you do those things for yourself. And there's us and the ways that we connect together, the things we do together, the things that we share, but like having a clear concept of those three entities. There's me, there's you, and there's us.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I haven't seen it like that before. And like you try to avoid these touching each other too much.
That they can each have their own little separate domains.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Nice. And maybe I don't know. It's cold, but it's often like things like this are often represented like with two circles, and they're like intersecting.
Yes, concentric circles.
And in the middle, that's the us.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where they overlap. Another, I think it was a video I saw not too long ago. I don't even remember who it was or where I saw it. Like, I just remember the idea. And it was this lady saying that if she calls her boyfriend or husband or whatever, she wants him to, not pick up sometimes. So she can wonder a little bit what he's doing. I was like, wait, what?
It's so interesting. I don't know if you know about Esther Perel, but she's a great resource on this topic and this kind of idea that I've been speaking. This me, you, and us, that might come from her too. I'm not remembering if was her idea, but she talks a lot about the importance of maintaining some kind of independence in relationships, and that being a something that contributes to sexual desire in a long-term relationship. Because if we become too merged and enmeshed and there's no distance or separation between us, it's hard to have a lot of desire there. Desire comes from the space between two people. So that's a perfect example of that. Like, it's appealing to me or attractive to me to not know every single thing about you. It's appealing for me to call you and for you not to answer, for me to have to not know what you're doing. You know, that's something that increases desire.
Nice. Because I think this is very easy to apply in our lives. And it does have such a big impact since
well, I say we when I mean to say I.
Yeah.
Tend to be as available as possible. Not only to partners, but to your friends and family. Even like I don't know. I like to, when I get text, to reply as soon as I can. Just okay, let's do it right away. Let's not let them wait for an hour. But I need to remind myself to not push it too hard.
I think about it from finding the balance between like, how do I honor my own needs and also honor others as well? So I don't want to, I have had to practice this because I can do this myself too. Okay. Like, I don't want to shut down my needs in order to be responsive to everybody else. So for example, I'll give you like a small example. So like, I used to check my phone and check my texts the first thing in the morning when I wake up every day. And I have friends who live on the East Coast who are 3 hours ahead of me. And so sometimes I'd have 10 texts when I'm waking up checking my phone at like 7 a.m. right? And that, so my day started in response to others versus having a moment to myself to check in, to ground myself, to get ready for my day, to think about what's important for me to accomplish today. It was like other focused, right? Yeah. So finding that balance between how do we connect? This is true for all kinds of relationships. How do we connect and show up for other people without not showing up for ourselves?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like treat yourself first in the morning, for example. Like, take your shower, meditate, eat something. Then
there you go. Exactly.
Then everyone else's turn is on. I was thinking of scenarios like hobbies, where when you should be present and not checking your phone. Like when you do any sport, or when you are at work, or I don't know, when you're having, dinner with friends, you shouldn't be, you should be conscious about them and about the situation, and just enjoy it without having to think about your phone or who's texting, calling you.
That's a great example. Yeah.
It's the same thing, just different, different things in life, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So we had already a few green flags there. I think there were 3. Do you have some more, or do you want to jump to?
Let's jump to red flags.
All right. Let's get spicy.
I know. So I go super serious with these because I have this background of being a therapist. And so my brain goes to like the biggest, like, this is very scary, worrisome stuff, right? Okay. So sometimes I always feel silly saying this because I feel like it should go without saying, but for some people it doesn't. So I feel like it's still worth saying. So any kind of indications of that are warning signs of abuse. So someone trying to control you, who you can talk to and who you can't, who you can be friends with and who you can't, how you dress, what you do, how you spend your time, those kinds of things. Big red flag in the beginning, especially if you see this from the beginning. And oftentimes that can be misconstrued as, this person really cares about me. They want to make sure I'm safe. They're so concerned about me. No.
No bueno.
Don't see it through that lens. See it through the lens of like, this is, so I would encourage everyone, especially if they have never been in an abusive relationship before, or experienced one, or seen a friend be one. I would think it's helpful for everyone to just know the signs of abuse so that you can be aware of them and be looking out for them in relationships, because people who are abusive can be extremely manipulative and can do things in a way that makes you feel like you're crazy and you have no idea what's going on. So just being aware of those things from the start, I think, helps protect you from getting into situations like that. So that's the big, scary, serious one.
Yes, that's a very big one.
Let me think of some not so scary and serious ones. So another one, I mean, it's, some of them are the opposites of the ones that we've talked about. So when somebody's, what they say and what they're doing doesn't line up, that might be as simple as beyond values. That might be as simple as, I'll call you on Friday to see about making plans for Saturday, and they don't call you on Friday. That's a red flag. That's someone who's not following through on what they're saying they're going to do. That shows that that person might not be trustworthy. That shows that that person might not have good intentions. So those are the kinds of things that are easy to let slide when you really like someone and you're really attracted to them. And like, oh, it's no big deal. They just didn't call me one time.
Yeah.
They're worth paying attention to, especially if you see that pattern continuing over time.
Like unreliability.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think this is something worth pointing out. And it's that when you first meet someone, or first stages of like first weeks, people behave the best they can.
Yes.
They're on their best behavior possible.
Yes.
So if they can't make it happen, then it's only going to get worse.
That is an excellent point. Yes. I think sometimes we think the opposite, like, oh, I'm just getting to know them. And like, once they know me better and they like me more, then they're going to act better. And I think the opposite is generally true, that like people are really trying to put their best foot forward from the very beginning. And if you're seeing little signs that are warning signs from the beginning, it's probably only going to magnify over time.
Really, really what I struggle with is discerning that's why these flags exist. But what is a minute thing that can be ignored, and what is a red flag that cannot? I mean, we have said already a few, but really in that moment where you think, okay, maybe I'm exaggerating this, or you don't want to make the deal too big of it.
Yes.
Where is that line?
So I'm so glad you brought that up, because this was something that I was thinking when you first asked about red flags and I mentioned that they're so individual to each person. Mm-hmm. So I think a way, something that's helpful in that discernment process is ideally before you're even dating someone. If you're already dating someone, you can do this process at any time, but it's best if you've not even met someone yet, to get really clear on what it is that you must have in a relationship and the things that you will not tolerate in a relationship. And so if someone is not meeting one of your must-haves, or they're doing one of your will not tolerates, that's a red flag for you, right? It might not be a red flag for someone else, because maybe one of those things isn't that important to them. But if it's a must-have or a won't tolerate for you, you know that like, no, this is not just something minor. This is actually something important enough that it could make or break this relationship.
Okay. Yeah. Make your own red flag list.
Exactly.
But I guess the same applies to green flags. Make your own green flag list too.
Exactly. Yes. What are the things you know you must have in a relationship, and what are the things you know that you will not tolerate? And you can also have a nice to have list too, where, oh, these things would be great, but if this person doesn't, so that's where people sometimes get caught up, I think, in looking for the perfect relationship. Like, I want all of these things in this relationship, and if any of them are not met, then this is not the right person for me. Okay. And that might be a little extreme. So I think it's nice to have like a must-haves and a nice-to-haves. And so if you're seeing a red flag that is in that they might not have one of the nice-to-haves, then you get to check in with yourself and ask yourself, like, is it a must? Is it necessary for me to have this in this relationship, or is it okay? Can I tolerate that that I might not have that with this person? Can I get that need met elsewhere in other relationships, with my family, with my friends, whatever? So it really is individualized.
Yeah. I see. So, I would say keep it as short as you can, so it's not too picky in that sense.
Yeah.
Being very mindful and know why they are there.
Yes.
Since they have very different meanings, and they're different because these are very gradual things. So they're what is for me a green flag is for you a red one sometimes. Yeah, it can be that heavy, that extreme, right?
Could be. Yeah.
And since we all change over time constantly, it's worth giving that list a review every so often as well.
Absolutely. Yes. Like, how is this relationship fitting what I've said? I think that that's a good practice all the time. I defined these things for myself early on. Can I check back on these things that I've defined for myself as I'm proceeding into this relationship with this person? Where does this stand now? Because what we tend to do biologically is just continue to invest more and more and more in someone if things are going moderately well, because it's so painful to sever a relationship with someone and have to start the process over again. But I think people really serve themselves by being honest with themselves and checking in and having that moment of reflection of like, is this relationship actually what I said that I wanted? Or is there something major here that's missing from my must-haves or on the list of will not tolerates that at first, at least I can try addressing that with this person. If I haven't already, I can let them know, hey, this is something that's really important to me. Are you able to meet me in this?
Yeah.
And then you get to see if they can do that or not.
Yeah. Give them a chance,
to do something about it.
If you really, want to.
Yeah.
I had an idea in my head. It just vanished. No, but it was regarding these lists. No, it's not. I was going to say it's easy to make them, but it's really not that easy to make them at all, actually. So, but maybe once you can come up with those, I feel like the real challenge is, to apply them.
Yes.
Because once you're biased emotionally with that person, that's why you probably said do it before you get to know someone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, really to be strict with them. I feel like there's where most people fail, because we all have our list in our minds.
Yes.
More or less.
Yes.
Right? We just don't like to apply them sometimes because we are very attractive to this person.
Yes. And it's painful. It's painful to have to let go of someone who you really like and to think about starting over. But if we can think about it from the perspective of this is a way that I honor myself, this is a way that I take care of myself, is by being really radically honest about whether or not this relationship fits the things that I've defined as important to me. And that's the important word too, that I didn't really say. When you're thinking about these must-haves and will not tolerate, you don't want to do like little arbitrary things that don't really matter to you. You want to think about, what do I actually value the most? What's actually the most important to me in a relationship? What actually has an impact on my satisfaction in a relationship? Whether or not they wear orange shirts, like that's just a silly example, but like probably not going to have a huge impact on your satisfaction in a relationship, right? Whether or not they're able to talk with you about difficult things, probably going to have a huge impact on your satisfaction in a relationship, right? So I think naturally we go to, at least like this was always kind of the message that I heard when I was younger, of like, I want a person who looks like this and drives X kind of car and has this kind of job. Maybe this is an American thing too. But all these like 5'9" superficial things that like don't actually really matter, right? And like we actually need to take it a level those things matter the least. Like really we want to take it to a more conscious and emotional and psychological level about what's actually going to feel good in a relationship. These material things, not going to have any impact on might have some impact on your lifestyle, but beyond that, probably pretty minimal.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of why I said, really keep your list as short as you can. And, because we all have our preferences, obviously, I think, one that pops in my mind is generally for women, they don't like guys that are, shorter than them. That's a very popular one.
Yeah.
And so it's really up to everyone, if that really is a deal breaker or not to you.
Absolutely.
I was thinking of silly red flags too. Like it's like, oh, if he doesn't wash his dishes after eating, like I can't do this. Like it's too much.
I've heard it all.
I can't handle this guy anymore. Okay. I hope we made clear, what kind of matters more, or what should matter more, what should matter less, right?
Yes.
I wanted to actually bring up a concept that I read on your profile, which was intentional dating. I was like, what is that?
Yes. So it speaks to a little bit of what we've been talking about so far, which is coming to dating with a knowledge of what it is you're actually looking for. So it's about what kind of relationship am I looking for right now? Like, am I just looking for something casual? Am I looking for something more serious? Am I looking to connect with someone deeply emotionally? Am I looking to connect with someone intellectually? It comes from doing what we've talked about here, which is what are the things that are important to me in a relationship? What do I value? What am I looking for? What am I looking for in a relationship? What am I looking for in a partner? And how do I want to feel in a relationship? And finding things that are as alignment in that as possible. And just trying to be conscious all along the way of what am I doing? How is this feeling? Is this aligned? Is this working for me? Versus doing what most people do, which is just kind of, am I attracted to this person or not? Do we like to do the same kinds of things? Do we enjoy each other's company? And not thinking much more deeply about the level of compatibility and, whether or not you both want the same things right now, if you want the same things in life, if you're looking for a long-term partner. So just trying to bring a lot more consciousness, mindfulness, intentionality to your approach to dating.
This brings up the question for me, because I feel like it would be very easy to listen to us now and say, oh, okay. So when you try to get into a relationship, you have to, take care of yourself, and you have to think of what your needs are and what you want. It would be very easy to say, oh, sounds a bit selfish. Like, I sort of think to know why it isn't. Well, I would love you to explain why it is.
Yeah. So I think about it as both people coming to the relationship with that, right? So it's not just about what do I need, but the other person in the relationship also being able to check in with themselves and ask themselves that same question. And the way that, like, the synthesis of a relationship between two people is reciprocal dialogue about that on both people's sides. So you're thinking about what you want in a relationship. They're thinking about what they want in a relationship. Hopefully they're communicating that to you from the beginning too, so that you also get a sense of, okay, well, does that match what my dream is for a relationship, what I'm wanting right now? And a relationship is naturally going to be a balance of what both people want. Yeah. And ideally, those two things are as in alignment as possible.
Okay, that's actually a little bit different from what I thought, but I think that's another great point.
What were you thinking?
So I was thinking it's not selfish behavior, because it's rather than that, it's a form of self-respect. Of as you said, to protect yourself and really to how you say, like, keep your stand, like showing respect for yourself generally makes the other person respect you too.
That's true.
Or maybe it's the only reason because if you don't, they don't have a reason to, or they don't get to do that as easily. So I was going more into that direction, but obviously it also makes sense that you taking your priorities seriously implies that you need to have him or her do that too.
Right.
And just because of that second part, it's not selfish anymore.
Right. But I totally agree with what you're saying too, that it is a way of respecting ourselves. And when we respect ourselves, not only does it cause the other person to respect us, but it respects the relationship too. Because if we're not respecting ourselves and we're just doing what we think we need to do to be a good partner or be good in the relationship, the relationship isn't fully authentic, right? Yeah. Like we benefit the relationship by being our real authentic selves and being truthful and transparent about who we are and what we want, versus showing up as this kind of like fake version of ourselves to try to keep the peace or keep things working.
Yeah, completely. And yeah,
It's hard to keep these ideas in mind.
It's a lot to think
coming
about.
from everywhere.
No, but I want to say that it led me to the idea of we going way back. We said that we need to communicate properly what we want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And or even if someone doesn't do that, communicate, hey, it's very important to me that this is done differently. And, in that way, you're trying to change the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So I've experienced before that I've been there. I've been on the side where I want to change the other person to fit my needs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the message came back, I thought you loved me who I am, or you liked who I am. Why are you trying to change me? And I didn't know what to say. I was like,
yeah.
Damn, you got me there.
Yeah.
Checkmate right there.
What would you say that to that person?
What would you say to the person who says, I thought you loved me as you are, as I am, and you're trying to change me?
Yes.
Well, see, the preventative person in me wants to say, like, this is why it's so important to try to communicate these things as early in a relationship as possible, so that it's clear, like, this is what both of us needs versus accepting. Wait a second, I don't like this about you. That's a really hard thing to hear. But once you're already at that point, what can you say to that person? Well, what were you thinking? What were you feeling in that situation?
I kind of saw her point. I was like, oh, you're kind of right. I kind of saw the truth behind that message.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, okay, what is more important? Like, is it more important for her to change it so I feel better? Or is it something I can overlook?
Yes, I'm so glad you said that. So here's the way I think about these kinds of things. I think about it as I'm recognizing that I want something to be different. And I don't think of it necessarily as changing someone as it is making a request of someone. So let's say, I mean, if you were wanting to change something radical about them, like let's say introversion, extroversion, like for example, my partner is an extrovert. He likes to be around people a lot. I am an introvert. He had the perception of me that I was an extrovert when we first met because I was single and I had friends coming to town and visiting me and we were going out more. And then when I get into a relationship, I'm happy to be at home. I don't go out all the time. So if my partner were to say to me like, I need you to be an extrovert in order for this relationship to work. Like, there's no way. I'm not going to change who I am as a person. I'm not going to change where I get my energy. Like that's not possible. So then it becomes his responsibility to decide, can I tolerate that this person is this way? What might be slightly different would be if he said, I really enjoy going out and doing things and being around people. And I would love it if you would be willing to accompany me to more of those things. Cool. I'm happy to do that as long as you understand that overall, I'm going to be an introvert. I'm going to want to be around people less than you do. But if you kind of pull me out of my shell and invite me to do things, I'm happy to do things more than would be my absolute 100% preference, because that's part of the kind of compromise in being in a relationship with someone.
Okay. I see. So it really does depend on what that thing actually is, and
I think so.
How far both are willing to, like, bend in a little.
Yes.
Okay.
And also how important that thing is to you. So like you said, I think of it as always, we're making a request, we're seeing what the other person is capable of. And then the ultimate question is if this person is not able to change their behavior in this way that I'm wanting them to, can I tolerate that? Can I accept that about them? Is that going to work for me in a relationship?
Yeah.
And I find oftentimes it's not a deal breaker thing for people. It's something that it would be a nice thing to have in the relationship, but it's not an absolute must. They can get that need met elsewhere. They can meet that need for themselves. Sometimes it is a deal breaker. Like, let's say it's really important for you. I'm just making something random. Let's say it's really, and using family again, which is a funny example, but let's say it's really important to you that like, it's really important to you that you have dinner with your parents every Sunday. Really important to you. And you really want your partner to be a part of that. And your partner is like, I am not willing to have dinner with your parents every Sunday. Right. Okay. So then you get to decide, can I go and continue to have dinner with my parents without my partner every Sunday? Your partner's cool with that. Your partner's like, go have dinner with your parents every Sunday. That's fine with me. I just don't want to be a part of that. Or is it important enough to you that you really need a partner who's going to engage in that activity with you? You get to decide that for yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's difficult. In that scenario, you can dig deeper and see why she doesn't want. And
also true.
Once maybe you can kind of go step by step and try to smooth it out until she wants.
Also true.
I guess.
Also true. Yeah, a no isn't necessarily a concrete no across the board. There might be something that could be done that could alter the situation in a way that might make the person willing to do it, or it might be a no across the board. They might just say, no, there's nothing that you could do to change this. This is not how I want to spend my time on my Sunday. They have a right to feel that way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. I see. Yeah. Okay. I was thinking of small things like being punctual, for example, or being respectful when you are at someone else's place. Things that matter to me. Yeah, or like self-control when it comes to drinking alcohol, beverages, things like that. And I feel like my filter is sometimes a bit different when it comes to friends rather to potential partners.
So true.
Like, I feel like sometimes I'm way harsher on friends.
Interesting.
Not sure you were thinking the other way around, but
I was actually thinking the other way because that's usually what happens for
friends,
people.
I'm
but
like,
that's interesting.
No, you can't do that.
Interesting. That's so interesting.
I'll tell them right away.
Yeah.
And they love me for it because since I tell them straight on, like, dude, this is a no-go for me.
Yeah.
They respect me much more, and I really like how that works out for me. But for partners, I'm like, dude, I get all loosey-goosey. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I don't know. If we can draw a conclusion from there, but
well, the one thing I could give you as a tip is see if you can draw some of that energy that you bring to your relationships with friends into your partnerships too, because I think that would probably serve you, right? Yeah. That like the same way that it serves your friendships, I think it will serve your partnerships too. I think often when people are in this spot, it's because like there's like some fear, maybe scarcity mindset around like, oh, if I lose this person, I might not find somebody else who likes me, kind of a thing. And I just think it's really helpful to come to relationships from the perspective of it's important for me to be my true authentic self, and the right person is going to like me exactly as I am. And if I'm sharing something that's true for me or something that's important for me and the person doesn't like that, they're not a good match for me. And it's important to know that sooner than later.
Yeah. It comes down to what I say is the most difficult part of having your flag list, which is applying it. And
right.
I don't know. It's what I feel like happens to me is, frankly, I'm scared of making the situation just awkward in that moment.
Yeah.
That's just a sad truth right there.
Yeah.
And I feel like through practice and through making it wrong a lot.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting there, but I don't know. It's for sure, or I feel like it's a very long process of getting this very, very big matter, which is called relationships, which really is another word for just interhuman interactions. I don't know, science. And I don't know. It's so much. It's so much that goes into this. We're touching on basically on our emotional and just cognitive way of processing that, and really looking out or watching out for us that our self-worth is preserved in a way. And but there are so many aspects that go into this as well, which is manners and communication, but not that you do it, but how you do it, and voice and just find the right moment, and I don't know, like but everyone has a different amount of need for that as well. Some people are very, very low need for communication. Instead, they compensate it with something else. So not everyone loves to just talk a lot. I mean, I'm not sure if this is a stereotype, but I feel like generally women tend to speak more than men. And yeah, when we speak about us, as we can draw from your experience with those 12 workers. No, yeah, but just this is just such an endless learning curve. I don't know. Sometimes it's quite frustrating, especially when from the very beginning. Like I started with relationships. Like kind of late, I guess, compared to like what is standard nowadays. Like 17, 18, So the first like at least 3-4 years, super stressed out.
Yeah.
Like lost. Super lost. What helped a lot was actually reading a few books about this. That helps a lot. Also, like reflecting about what you have done wrong in those previous relationships and kind of draw conclusions out of that and learn from it.
Yeah.
Something I've never been able to give an answer to that I've been asked quite a few times is, how do you not take like issues from past relationships to new relationships? I've been cheated once, and now I'm always scared to be cheated on.
Yes. So it's tricky because there can be a trauma element of that. And I think when there's like a true trauma element of that, it really needs therapy to address it. And we don't always think of like relational things as being traumas. Sometimes we think of like trauma as being like, serious abuse or a major car accident or something like that. But even something like being cheated on or having just a really painful negative ending of a relationship can impact our ability to be in relationships going forward and not carry that stuff forward. So if we're finding that we're carrying something forward from past relationships, there's usually a trauma element to it. So the beginning stages of that is getting clear on what is actually true right now with this person and separating out what is old stuff that I'm bringing with me. I don't actually have any evidence for that in this relationship, but it's just something that I'm bringing with me. I personally think that like treating trauma takes much more than that, but that's at least like a beginning step that you can take to kind of help separate out what's actually true right here, right now versus what's old stuff that I'm bringing with me.
Okay. Sounds easier than then. It's like, on paper,
yeah. Sometimes there's some pretty deep emotional healing that needs to go into that in order to really be able to let go of the old stuff and not have it show up in the present.
Which potentially can be done without therapy. Is that possible? Can we like auto therapy ourselves?
I'm sure it's possible. I think therapy is the most effective because, especially with this kind of stuff, because when we're wounded in relationships, it's easiest to heal in relationship, and therapy is a relationship. So it has this other kind of impact that's just more effective than trying to do these things on your own. I'm sure there's workbooks and stuff that you can work through, but it's just, and it's not to say it can't work, but there's nothing as powerful as doing it in therapy.
Okay, I see. I mean, I feel like we all are in therapy with our friends, right? Because, you tell your friend or your best buddy or whatever.
Yes.
What's going on in your life and your problems, and you try to, solve and have another set of eyes look over it.
Yes.
Why does that not work? So, why can't they help us?
That's a great question. I was going to say that is at least another relational way of dealing with it. So there's probably things that are even more helpful about that than trying to do it completely on your own. But, trauma is really tricky in the way that it's treated. And even a lot of therapists, like when I first got trained, when I first went to grad school, I learned very little about trauma. And the only way that I became a therapist who handles trauma well is by doing specialized training in trauma, because traditional talk therapy is not the best tool for trauma. I'm trained in EMDR, which is a great modality for people that it's EMDR, just the letters, stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a really helpful way to work through trauma. There's also, what are some other ones? There's like a CBT approach to treating trauma. I prefer EMDR, but some people like the CBT side of things. There's a type of therapy called somatic experiencing that's all about getting into the way your body holds trauma, because there's this really interesting connection between the brain and the body and how trauma goes. Anyway, I won't get into all of that, but
I was getting like, oh, this is getting quite intense.
But because it requires specialized training to really know how to help people heal through these kinds of things, it's the kind of thing, like I said, not even every therapist knows. And certainly most people in the general public don't know how to help people with. So
I see where you're going.
It requires,
We're just not prepared for that talk.
We're just not prepared. And that's okay. It's not our job. It's not our responsibility. We can outsource that to the professionals.
Yeah. Okay. What I can draw from that is it is not easy.
Yes.
It is not easy to understand it. It's not easy to communicate it, to solve it.
Yes.
Not only on the side of the advice giver, but also on the advice taker.
Yes.
Right? Because I've been on that giver side a lot. Like way too many times. and I most of and it's not always like it, but most times they don't really want to hear that. It's often a let me speak and you listen.
Yes.
Which is okay, I guess.
Yes. Yes.
Just for guys, it's really hard to just listen and just not try to solve the problem.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, I gotta just hold on to the table. I can't say anything. And okay, they just want to, get their mind out there. But sometimes they do want it, and they just can't. Like, they understand what I tell them.
Yes.
But they can't apply it. Like, they're like, yes, but no. They're so emotionally bounded or biased to that struggle. They can't like see it.
Yes.
But like, it's completely like, it's like I see both sides. On one side, I see her or him, like the one who's suffering, because the person is right, because they know the most about it,
right?
And so they should be able to evaluate the situation better,
right?
And I see the giver, since he's or she is a very she's much more objective about it, right? That person ain't biased, and they're just gonna tell you the truth that will be visible to most people outside of that relationship.
Right.
So that which should give that person a lot of credibility too, right?
So it's like this endless battle. It's like, okay,
yeah.
What are we doing here?
Yeah. I think the general rule too is that we can't really help people or change people unless they're in the position of wanting to receive that help and change.
Yeah.
So we might have great ideas for them about what they could do differently, but if they're not coming to us from a place of, I'm willing to do something differently about this, we can say anything we want. We could say great things that make tons of sense, but if they're just not in that state of being willing to do something differently, they're just not going to.
Oh, all right. I'm curious now, because as a therapist, you have to have clients or patients that, were in that mindset. They wanted help, but they didn't really were open to change yet.
Yes.
How do you get through that, or do you say, "Oh, I can't help you out"?
So there's actually a great style of therapy called motivational interviewing that's really good for that, and it's trying to kind of move people through the stages of change, because there are different stages. I'm not an expert in this; I just have a little bit of training in it.
Okay.
But you listen for the parts of the person or the things that the person is saying that show that they're interested in making a change, and you reflect those things back to them. So you might say, for example, let's say someone says to me, I want to leave this relationship, but I'm really scared to. And in the process of talking about why they want to leave the relationship, they talk about how painful it is to be on the receiving end of this person's mean things that they say to the person who's my client. And so I might say back to them, just reflect back to them what they're telling me. Like, I hear that there's an aspect of you, there's a part of you that wants to leave this relationship, and there's this other part of you that's really scared. And I'm hearing that one of the things that you're really not enjoying about this relationship, or what's really hard about it for you, is this person saying mean things to you and how that feels for you. So you're just kind of, it's like planting the seeds. Like, okay, we talk a little bit here. You're motivated for change here. You're motivated for change here. These are the reasons why you want to go. Also, I don't know that motivational interviewing recommends this, but something that I do because I find it helpful is to be able to acknowledge the resistance or the ambivalence. Because if we pretend that that's not there, it's like hitting your head against a brick wall, because you just, you're trying to go with something, you're trying to go against something that's there. So whenever my clients are like, I'm not sure I want to do this, or I'm not sure, rather than fighting them on it, I tell them, like, I understand, like, yeah, there's risk involved in that. There might be pain in doing that. I understand why you're feeling resistant to it. And also I'm hearing the reason what you might want to make this change is this.
Yeah. Okay. So you kind of making them hear what they say, right?
Exactly.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm gonna
try that.
Apply that. It's like, yeah, because they say it, but they don't know they're saying that. Like, they don't hear that.
Yes.
So
it might just pass through them very quickly and simply. And so when you say it back to them, it might help it land a little bit more like, oh yeah, that doesn't feel good to me. I did say that. Oh
yeah. You give them like an opportunity to think about it a bit more.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so smart. It's actually, it's sort of obvious, but like, I don't know, like, I don't think I could have come up with that by myself.
I felt the same way when I learned about that. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense in practice, but I wouldn't have thought to do that myself. Yeah.
All right. Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
I mean, I could like ask you 10 more questions, but like about things that, I really want to know, but okay.
Yeah. I do have to get going pretty soon here, so maybe we can start to wrap up. Okay.
Let's move on to just touch the last big topic that this podcast is all about, which is creativity. So I would love to hear from you, take on what creativity means to you and how it impacts, your work and how you work with your clients.
It's interesting. I'm a very kind of logical and analytical person. And so being on social media has really forced me to tap into my creativity. And now that I'm in the flow of that, I'm finding I really enjoy it. And it really helps me, like tapping into it really helps me generate ideas of ways that I can help people, both that I use to kind of put into my content. And then as I'm making content, it also kind of informs the work that I do with people, because often the stuff that I'm making content on is things that are relevant to my clients too. So, the way that creativity really comes up for me in my life is like generating new things, like creating something out of nothing, or putting together all of the stuff that I have in my head and presenting it in a way that is helpful to other people and makes sense to other people. So that's the main way that it comes about in my work.
Okay. I always ask this question because I love to hear the different take everyone has on this word, since it does mean different things to different people. And it really is, in the end, what kind of makes us grow so much, we're getting to an end, and I would love to ask if there's anything we might have missed out on, which I doubt. Something we haven't touched on that might still be interesting or worth mentioning, or maybe a brief story about an experience you had with a client that would be worth sharing, that illustrates an idea, just to give another piece of advice for the young people out there.
Sure. Well, I just told this story recently, so I'll tell it again because it might be interesting. It's actually a personal story rather than with a client, but I think it applies to everyone. So there's this idea in relationships that comes from John Gottman, who's a researcher on relationships and marriage, about bids for connection in relationships and how important it is for us to be responsive to our partner's bids for connection and for them to be responsive to ours. So bids for connection are anything that we do to try to get attention, affection, or affirmation from our partner. And sometimes they show up as really, they don't look like they're a bid for connection. Like it might be something really simple. So for example, you might be sitting on the couch and ask your partner to bring you a glass of water. And it might not even really be so much about getting the glass of water as it is asking your partner to kind of pay attention to you, to be of service to you, to connect with you in some kind of way. So it's helpful, I think, to be looking out for those kinds of things in relationships. The story that I told recently was that I really like TikTok and my partner does not like TikTok. He doesn't have a TikTok account. He doesn't use TikTok. Okay. And sometimes I'll find like TikTok videos that I want to show him. And because he's not used to the style and pace of TikTok, he's like averse to it. He just really doesn't like it. Okay. It's like stressful to him. So I was showing him a video and the person was talking really fast to try to get through whatever it was they were wanting to talk about in this short amount of time that they had for their TikTok. And he like looked at the video and he's like, "Ugh, what is this? Why do they talk so fast? I don't like it." And he just like kind of gave me my phone back. Okay. And I was hurt in the moment because it wasn't so much about like the actual video as it was like, here's something that I liked and found interesting and I wanted to share this with you. Okay. And so because I know about Biz for Connection, I was able to notice right in the moment what was happening. And so I told him, it's not so much about the video. It's just that I want to share something with you. And it's important when I want to share something with you that you want to receive it, and there might be times where you can't, or you don't want to, or whatever it might be, but it's important to be able to communicate about that. And as soon as I said that to him, he softened immediately. He's like, "Oh, I want to see the video." He wanted to connect with me. I was like, "It's okay if you don't want to watch the video, but I just wanted to bring this bigger point to light." So it's helpful to be looking out for your partner's bids for connection, to notice when you're bidding for connection, and to be able to communicate past like whatever resistances might be there naturally.
Okay, nice. Yeah, those little touches, of every day. Okay, I like that. Bits of connection.
That's the key word there.
All right. So I think we're good. Before we end this, I want to give you the opportunity to share with the audience where they can find you, where they can check out your work, get in touch, and maybe reach out to you if they feel.
Yeah. So the best way to find lots and lots of free content from me is on Instagram at Coaching with Keriann. And there on my profile, there is also a link to my website, which is coachingwithkeriann.com. All the information that you would need about working with me is there. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me via DM. If you want to know more about working with me, happy to communicate with folks that way. That's where all my stuff is.
Okay, great. Obviously, all those links will be available on all posts and on this episode description as well, so you can easily find it there. Keriann, thank you so much for being here and spending some time with me, since we all are busy, and it's always great to make this happen.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lovely conversation, and I appreciate your thoughtful questions.
Great. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Took a lot of valuable lessons from it, which I'm sure you all did, since there was a ton that was discussed here today. Very great conversation. Very happy. This was Keriann Long from the States. I'm Lucas, and this was a Creative Cast.
Been the best part of my life.